City of Stevens Point Board of Water and Sewerage Commissioners meeting, recorded January 11th, 2021.
Yep, we've got all five on and I've got the recording going. So I think we can count that as roll call if you'd like.
Very well, so be it. Welcome, everybody. First order of business is the approval of the minutes from last month. Are there any corrections or additions? If not, a motion to approve is in order.
I'll move for approval.
Oops.
I got a second from Anna. I didn't catch the first.
Ray, approve for
Ray,
approval.
okay, thanks, Ray. All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Approval of claims. The first section will be the water department.
Can I
Any
just ask real
questions?
quick, are you seeing my screen with the approval of claims up right now?
Yes.
Okay, real good, thanks.
Any questions on the water department claims? Okay, let's go on to the sewage department. Questions? All right, if not, we'll go on to stormwater department. By the way, for those of you who see Dave Laddock on the call, on the Zoom call, Dave's here, well, just to look at our process here with sewer and water and it's so forth. But more importantly, he wants to be involved with the discussions about on the airport, one of the agenda items there. So welcome, Dave. Any questions about stormwater? If not, a motion is in order to approve all three.
So move Nachman.
Second, Ray.
All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, Joel, time to get to capital operations. You may recall, other commissioners, that we normally do this in December, but because of the fence discussion and then what turned out to be over an hour and a half meeting, Joel and I decided to postpone this until today. And you also should make reference to the sentence or two that he had before the attachment on the agenda and all the attachments to the agenda as it relates to how things are going to be different with capital improvements this year. Joel?
Yeah, thank you. So basically what I was getting at on there is that there's some things that are known right now and some things that aren't. So I think what I'll do is walk through this kind of swiftly quick all through all three utilities. And then maybe if we can just kind of go back and do any questions that'd kind of highlight what we have going on. I just did them in order of fund number. So this is our fund one, this is water. The thing that we have a pretty good understanding on every year is that we do reconstruction projects every year. That's that first line. 635,000 is the current estimate. This project is being designed with a third party this year, engineer that's Grammar right out of town here. So they will be getting their engineer's estimate together relatively soon. And really, when that comes up, if it's vastly different, of course, we'll come back to you with that knowledge. And then whenever a project isn't in line with what you've approved for capital, when it gets approved at award time, then it'll come back to you. If it's within our estimate or 15%, we don't necessarily do that. But if it's outside of that, we do. Well, for the reconstruction of the well and well house, you guys may recall this. We're in some preliminary engineering right now. What's going on is we're doing some well siting. So this is an estimate on this year's expenses. Well 4, you'll recall we have shut down at the moment. So the well itself needs to be relocated, not the treatment plant as a whole. So we're working on that with Strand and Associates right now.
This is the one down by the Plover River, correct?
That's right. The north side of 10 near the bottom of the river, just west of Hilltop Pub there. Yep.
Thank you.
The well 11 roof has been a matter that we've been dealing with for some time. We've been through quite a bit of evaluation there. It doesn't look as though we've got a ton of recourse on the fact that it was relatively new when it failed. However, we're not done with that component of it yet. But for the sake of capital, we wanted to bring you this estimate. That's the roof replacement on well 11.
Who's the attorney, Joel? Who's the attorney working on that?
We're doing that in-house.
Okay.
Logan, yep. And we haven't gotten into a ton of legal stuff yet because we're still dealing with how does the spec match the construction? Did they construct it to spec? Was it a bad design spec? That whole thing. So we haven't gotten into any of the real legal representation end of it yet. Hydrant painting is normally about a $25,000 item. We bumped that up because we didn't do any in 2020 just to account for that. So that's a little higher, but we didn't do it last year. There's 2 items here that are being split between all 3 utilities, a dump truck and GPS equipment. Our second dump truck is an older one. I think it's about 15 years old now. And we're going to propose to replace that with one like we just purchased pretty recently here. Was it last year? It might have been last year. So similar because it works really well for us. The third of the GPS equipment, we have 2 inspectors now, and we also have a GIS tech. So we have 3 people that really in the heart of construction season need this equipment, and we only have 1 unit. So along with the growth of staff and the growth of those kind of responsibilities comes the need for this equipment. So that's what that is. That'll give us 2 GPS rover units that we can go around with. All the stuff under computer and software here is pretty typical stuff. This didn't change in the last couple years. I'm going to move on to sewer here, and then we'll recap if we need to. A couple of roofs. We've been at roofs at the treatment plant for a couple years now. They're turning out really, really nice. They're doing a good job. They'll last a long time. The 2021 reconstruct projects. This is, again, the stuff we do every year. That's an estimate right now. We'll see how accurate that is when the engineer's estimate comes back and when we go to awarding and bidding. Here's those shared items. The generator, the trailer mounted generator, we were doing one of these a year for like 3 years. These are these old ones that we use for when lift stations are down and without power and other things. So that's just another one of those. Door replacements, you know, the treatment plant's a pretty caustic place. It goes through doors, and when they start going, they go quick. So there's some door replacements like the double door, big steel door type things in the buildings that are getting pretty bad. So that's to replace those. The grit pump rebuild. I'll have you note again, and I think we go through this every year, but where you see these stars, it indicates that it's eligible for replacement fund dollars. So those are dollars that are set aside for existing equipment. So that's covered with those dollars. Intrusion alarm update. This $20,000 item really came to our we became aware of it following the biosolids building upgrade. There's a lot going on with buildings changing and stuff like that. And this is a pretty old system, and there's some radios and relays between buildings that need to either be updated or replaced. And the update cost was, not a fraction of the replacement cost. So this is essentially a new system for the entire treatment plant for all the intrusion alarms. Lab incubator is just a replacement for that. That's what we put some of our samples in there. It's used every day. It's an expensive piece of equipment, but it's pretty essential to what we do over there. Biogas engine rebuild. That might be one you want to get into a little more, but essentially it's time once again that engine get rebuilt. The thing runs steady when it's running. We've gotten basically the normal routine hours out of it that we're supposed to get out of it, and it's not running on all cylinders right now, I guess literally. So that's to rebuild that. And then it looks like we'll need to get an estimate in the boiler end of things here. Joel,
Is the biogas engine a diesel or a standard combustion engine?
It's the engine that generates heat and electricity off of our biogas, the gas, the methane that the plant creates.
But my question is it diesel?
Yes, it operates as a diesel engine, but it runs off of our natural gas, but it is a diesel engine.
Okay, thank you.
The additional item under computers and software here that wasn't on the water one is this half of televising software purchase. The camera that we send down the storm and the sanitary sewers works on a piece of software to record that video, to add annotation to the video, and to make it available for review. That is software we're proposing to replace so that it integrates with our GIS a little better and so that we have recallability. The stuff we're using now just hasn't kept up with the functionality we need along with the other stuff in the department. Moving on to storm, again, we have reconstructs, and this is a big item of discussion. You see this huge number here. And I put the note that as this happens, we're going to have to borrow for this. Storm being our smallest utility doesn't have that kind of money. But this is including a lot of the fixing that is needed on the north side to mitigate the kind of regional flooding we get in storm events. So that's been several years in the making. There's some sewers, some of our biggest storm sewer in town, getting tied into that. We're constructing things that are, in the 7 to 10 feet in diameter range. So that is a huge project, and that's one where we're definitely going to need to bring that back when we get an estimate and then talk about borrowing for that project.
Where are those reconstruct projects going to be? The whole north side, or?
It's north side, kind of from center point to the north and west.
Okay.
I'll get a map out so you guys can see those streets. In fact, I could probably even pull one up here later on. Pretty standard stuff here. Again, the split items here. We typically do select some swale reconstruction areas because we've been doing that aggressively since we've been a utility. So we'll fine tune this number also. And then again, these are all the same software items. Acela, so that you guys know, that appeared on all three, is our billing software. Financial suite, I guess I should say. CityWorks is our work order and asset management software. ESRI is our GIS software. And Starnik is the billing software that we're going away from currently back to Acela. So that's the capital as a whole. Did you want me to go back to anything in particular, or would you just like to kind of go along with the fact that, yeah, we're going to have some detail that we have to bring forward on some of the bigger items as they develop, and have us do it from there?
Joel, how does this number combined, the three of them, compare with last year's approximately?
Well, that's kind of tricky because we're coming off of a $16 million treatment plant upgrade. But I'd say that, when it comes down to it, when you look in water at reconstruction, and when you look at sewer in reconstruction, those are pretty standard numbers. Like here and here. The big one that we need to look more at and figure out the financing side of it is this right here in storm. Honestly, these bigger projects that are going to be pretty rare are part of the reason there's a stormwater utility formed at all. Because adding $3 million to the projects that are funded out of levy would be pretty unsustainable. But this is the one where it's probably the loosest estimate we have right now, and we're waiting on some final design to bring back. Other than that, to be honest with you, if it weren't for this is a fairly small year. And it's good that it comes that way because we had a couple of big years. So it could be, with this borrowing and the sewer and water not being too bad, it could be a bit of a rebuilding year for the fund balances, I hope. But we're going to have to work through some of those details yet.
So when do you believe the last, it'll be brought up with formal estimates to choose a contractor? So
generally on the big reconstructs every year, we try to put them out to for for bid to award late February, early March, mid-March, somewhere in there. So in the next 2-3 months, we'll have prices in hand. We're going to go off the construction estimate a lot that the engineer provides to make sure that we have numbers in hand to work on borrowing. And I imagine I'll have stuff for you maybe next month on that. And I'll work with Corey on that, but we're also looking at Clean Water Fund, or rather whatever funds out of the environmental loan section that we can get, because they're 1% or below right now, I think. So we're going to try to use those funds, and all we need to do is a reimbursement resolution so that we can get these projects started, but reimburse ourselves once the loan comes through.
Would your intent be to bring that map that you referenced at that time then?
Yeah. Yep. And in fact, I can try to pull that up on my other screen here while we're talking.
All right. Any questions on either one of the three departments?
I've got a question on the stormwater. Joel, is that 3.3 million there just one package that we could go with, or is it all integrated and all needs to be pretty much done during the same year?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Really what it comes down to, and let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Let me see. Sometimes things don't work the best when I'm also sharing my screen. Nope, I don't know why I don't have that on here. Really what it comes down to, I'll get that out to you guys. Really what it comes down to is the fact that if we construct a good portion of it, but not all of it, we move the project from one spot to another and create a literal bottleneck in the infrastructure, which will move our issue, say, from Fifth and Grant down to somewhere closer to Center Point.
Okay.
And it actually happens really, really conveniently that the streets that need reconstructing in that neighborhood are ones that we can use for this path with only a 1-block exception, and that's right by the west side of MEJ's there. The city as a whole, DPW, has reconstruction plans for the exact area that we need to be running this pipe, which is awesome because that means that, we're not going to get stuck with reconstructing the road as well. This project would be, there'd be another 7 digits on that, right? I mean, you could maybe not double it, but almost, or maybe double it if we had to take care of the flooding and repave the roads because the city wasn't prepared or didn't want to pave them. Okay. So that's really advantageous. There is a little more in the area to be done, but this really does connect the problem area to the sewer that has the capacity to take it away all at once.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
So Joel, is this getting to, I think the discussion we had now, I don't know when it was, a year, 2, 3 years ago, when there was flooding on the north side, really bad rain. We had people come to this meeting, and then you had talked about, huge, I think they were 84 inches in diameter, something like that.
Yeah, this is that project.
Drive. So this is what that project is, basically?
Yeah, this ties all the way into basically what would be the south side of the Lullaby project, right in there, that sewer, the old Moses Creek pipe, where the new meets the old, and it's pitched backwards, and that whole area. This is tying into that system to move the water from the neighborhood northwest of there through our system.
Okay. Well, it needs to happen, that's for sure.
Yeah. And, we've gone through quite a bit of modeling with a consultant to look at, I think we're up to 5 or 6 alternatives that we've modeled to do the best we can with the money that it's going to cost. And the modeling does show a significant improvement. I mean, now granted, you can't fix every situation, right? I mean, if you get a storm with a certain characteristic, there's going to be water in the streets on occasion. But what we're trying to do is prevent those 2 to 5 foot surcharges in areas where it's doing property damage.
All right. Any other questions? If not, a motion is in order to improve the capital operations and maintenance plan budget.
Carl was waving his hand.
All right, I'll assume that's a first from Carl.
I'll second Haynes.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right. Water supply and distribution report, Eric.
Hi, everyone. I hope you had a good Christmas and Happy New Year. The only thing I have to add is the well 7 update. We're currently repiping that from the 2020 capital. We had some repairs that you don't know about until you pull the piping and equipment out of the ground and then realize that it's pitted and cracked. So there's a couple $1,000s of added cost to it, but they're currently getting that at their shop down in Milwaukee area all up to speed, and then that'll be back in the ground hopefully next week or the week after, back online. And then this week we're doing our annual flushing the laterals at well 11 in the collector well. That's offline for a couple of days. All we do is we flush it out of a hydrant and make sure all 8 laterals that go out like fingers into the ground are clean of debris and not building up. So any questions on pumping or anything else?
When you flush those laterals, does the water flow in through the laterals to the central caisson?
Yeah, so what we do is we actually have to enter the well itself. So our chief operator is all suited up from head to toe. We still have to get 2 safe back T samples afterwards because we're entering the well itself.
Sure.
He goes down to the second level where there's valves, and he'll shut off every valve except for 1 lateral. And then we'll flush that up through the piping out a hydrant outside for a half hour. Then he'll close that one, open the next one, and he just keeps going around the clock until all of them are done.
Gotcha, cool.
The first inspection we had on that well after it's been online was in 2018, and it showed significant buildup inside each lateral because we're running at less than the design capacity. And so our plan was every year in January when we have slow pumping to climb down in there for a day and flush them out. So this is our 3rd year, and we've had significant improvement on the color of the water coming out. So I think it's working.
And that just surface discharges that water coming out, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Further questions of Eric? Not a motion is in order.
So move.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by a sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Hey, Paul, I got a question here. I was waving my hand because I had lost the audio and did have a question related to those that capital budget.
Sure, go ahead.
Wasn't able to get through. It had to do with are the items on the capital budget because you called out the 3.2 million on the let's see, stormwater project. Are the other remaining items, are they paid out of reserves and operating capitals or annual budget?
Right. So for the most part, we try to handle routine years and routine purchases and routine reconstructions out of fund balance. I just wanted to point out that 3.2 obviously is not going to get covered out of fund balance. And when we need to, we definitely bring back items related to borrowing, for those larger projects. So yeah, that's the only one right now that I suspect is stormwater that we're going to have to do some borrowing on.
Okay. And that, that probably addresses my question overall, but then the question, like on all the software, before we used to buy copies of AutoCAD and ArcGIS and the other software. Now we're, all these companies have switched to a lease arrangement. And the question is, are they true capital expenditures? Because we're not purchasing something, we're getting a service.
Yeah.
Something better attuned to operating capital than
It brings up a really good point. You know, we've floundered around a little bit over the years. I mean, it hasn't even been that long since we brought sheets like this forward, but that's why we kind of call it capital operations and maintenance plan. There is some things that really have nothing to do with capital in here. They're just larger routine expenses. We don't have to do this software portion on here if you don't want. This was just at one time kind of the format we came up with. And you're right. Like this Starnic one, for example, this is a software as a service, cloud-based, and that's the fee for the use of it. The others work differently. It's a maintenance on a license or an enterprise level license agreement, that kind of thing. So it does vary on what the actual cost is for, whether it's a software as a service or a license agreement for a couple of years or whatever. If there's a different way you guys want to see that stuff, or if not at all, because I mean, frankly, we have larger annual expenses than these software things. I mean, I'm not putting our power bill on there, stuff like that. So yeah, we could go a number of ways on here, and I could keep it to literal capital items in the future if you'd like. It'd certainly be simpler.
Well,
Carl, I think your observation is a great one, and I agree with it. Having said that, it's, even though we're reviewing 3 different departments, there's not a lot of complexity here. And, it doesn't hurt for us to, look at city works maintenance, for example. And, if all of a sudden one of the 5 of us has a recollection that, historically that's $6,000, $7,000 a year. And then when we look at this once a year, all of a sudden now it's double that, one of us is bound to ask why. So I don't disagree with what you're saying, Carl, but if this was a 20-page report, it might be another matter. But what do we have? 5?
3. Yeah, and to be honest, it might work better. I think we've been in this format for several years now. I think I will try to play around with the format a little bit so that it does show side by side rather than sheet after sheet some of the historical perspective, so you guys can see, hey, this went up, this went down. So I'll play around with the format a little bit to kind of keep evolving with things here and make sure that we're delivering something that's easy to read and valuable in a short amount of time.
Certainly. And again, my concern had to do with whether we were bonding for any of this capital plan, and you've identified where we are actually bonding versus paying as we go.
Yep, right there.
Anything else, Carl?
No, thanks. Sorry
Right.
about audio.
Oh, that's okay. We're all learning. All right, now let's go on to Chris and the sewage treatment report.
All right. Glad to say that the wastewater plant met all of our permit requirements for December. Electrical generation from the cogen system, we were able to produce about 30% of our electricity that we produced or we used on site. That's down a little bit. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then we were able to produce about 70% of our own heat. We did run the dryer for an exceptionally long period of time in December to get through the holidays. Everything did go very well with that. So that was a good thing. The reason that we were short on electrical production compared to our norm is for the last week of December, we were told to stop running the generator. The reason that is on our capital items list for a rebuild is we actually have gotten to the point where one of the gaskets on the cylinder is leaking, and we're actually allowing antifreeze into the oil. So we need to do a rebuild on that engine before we can fire it back up. Other than that, that's all I've got for you.
Chris, as long as you brought that generator back up, I assume you've compared the cost to rebuild this thing to replacing it completely.
Yes.
And what would the replacement amount be versus the rebuild?
Replacement's a little over double what the rebuild is.
And how old is that engine right now?
Well, on the rebuild, they basically are taking all of the wear parts and replacing them. So right now, that's about I think it's a 6-year-old engine right now. So it's about every 6 years, 5 to 7 years, somewhere in there is where they say that the replacement's necessary.
Thank you very much. Any other questions of Chris? Joel, I think I made a mistake on the last agenda. I don't think we needed a motion to approve any of that. It's just the report as we've done in the past.
Sure.
And the same would be true for Craig's report.
Yep. Eric's report, Chris's report, and Craig's are all kind of just place on file type thing.
Right. Craig, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Weather's been nice, so we've been replacing the valves, some valves and water valves. We have another one to replace. Looks like possibly got pushed back to Wednesday because of a high pressure gas main. The weather keeps continuing. We'll continue to do quite a bit of a hydrant maintenance. Crews are doing inventory for the end of the year things, just about completed. Other than that, everything's kind of running as normal. So hopefully it snows. We can get out and pile snow for Jason.
Very good. Any questions of Craig? If not, Joel, we'll talk about the community area network, please.
Yeah, we've been learning a lot here. That's the big message for the report this time. You know, we took over locating of all the facilities related to fiber. We've been getting into the buildings now at the endpoints of the big project we just did for the school district. We're learning how to troubleshoot some of that stuff, label some of that stuff. So we're brand new into this part of the network, really, or this operation. So I'd say things are going really well. Just wanted to report that we're kind of learning at the same time. There's a lot of things that we were used to doing for a lot of years that didn't get really into the nitty gritty of everything. So things are going well there.
Any other items for your director's report?
Not today.
All right. A motion to adjourn is in order.
I'll move to adjourn.
All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. On to the Airport Commission.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.